What if Africa was just one country? Africa is a big place, but many people often get things wrong about it. They think all of Africa is the same. But Africa has many countries with many different people. In total, 1.4 billion people are living in Africa. For a long time, people have had the wrong idea about Africa. They think it's only a place with problems like hunger and sickness. This isn't true for the whole continent. It's not right to think one country represents all of Africa, just like one person doesn't speak for everyone. When people make big claims about Africa without knowing the facts, others might get upset. They feel this shows ignorance. It's important to know the truth about Africa and to understand its diversity. Many people think Africa is just one place, but Africans know it's not. Africa is big. It has 54 countries, and each country is unique. They have their own money, beliefs, and leaders. Some areas in Africa even see themselves as Arab, not African. Africa is changing fast. It faces challenges, but also has many success stories. Cities like Nairobi, Kigali, and Lagos are becoming tech centers. These cities are making big moves in the digital world. There are also big companies in Africa. For example, Google has offices there. They are working on making the internet faster for many people in Africa. The money Africa makes is growing faster than other places in the world. More people are moving to cities. The internet is reaching more people. This helps many in Africa join the bigger world economy. Africa has many countries, but they don't always work well together. This slows down their growth. It also makes Africa depend on others. Jolin Ackle, a big boss at Iron Capital, talks about this. Iron Capital is a company that works only in Africa. He says that the countries in Africa don't support each other enough. For example, they don't buy and sell a lot with each other. In 2017, only 17% of all trade in Africa was between African countries. This is very low. It's the lowest of any big area with many countries. Imagine if Africa was one big country. It's made up of 54 different nations. Each one has valuable natural stuff like gold and oil. Some countries make a lot of money from these resources. South Africa makes the most. $125 billion every year. Nigeria earns $53 billion. Algeria gets $39 billion. Angola $32 billion. And Libya $27 billion. These 5 countries make most of the continent's money. Now, think about a world where all African countries were united. What if you could travel easily from one end of Africa to the other? What if they all used the same money? Africa is really big. It's about 30.3 million square kilometers. That's 3 times bigger than Europe. And it has 1.4 billion people. That's a lot, but less than India and China. But more and more people are being born in Africa, so its population will grow really fast. If all of Africa came together, it would be a strong and powerful place in the world. By the end of this century, Africa will have a lot more people. The UN says there will be 4.4 billion people in Africa. This means almost 4 out of every 10 people in the world will be from Africa. But having so many people can be both good and challenging. With more people, Africa could be very powerful, but it also means there will be more problems to solve. Right now, most people in Africa are young. The average age is 19.7 years. This is much younger than the world's average of 30.4 years. Not everyone in Africa can read and write well. On average, 64 out of 100 people are literate. But this number is different in different countries. For instance, in Libya, 94 out of 100 people can read and write. But in South Sudan, only 27 out of 100 people can. Africa is really big and has many different people and cultures. If it was one country, it would be very diverse. There are so many languages in Africa. In fact, it's the place with the most languages in the world. People there speak between 1,250 and 3,000 different languages. Many Africans can speak 2 local languages and another language from Europe. Some big languages in Africa are Arabic and Swahili. About 17% of people speak Arabic, mainly in the north. Swahili is spoken by 10% of people, mostly in the southeast. There are also other languages like Berber and Hausa. Many people also speak English, French, and Portuguese. English is spoken by 13% of the people, French by 11.5%, and Portuguese by 3%. If Africa was one country, all these languages might be official languages. Africa is like a giant mosaic of cultures. It's filled with so many unique groups of people that counting them all can be really tough. Imagine trying to list every colour in a rainbow, but the rainbow is bigger than anything you've ever seen. That's what trying to identify every ethnic group in Africa is like. Each of these groups has its own traditions languages, and ways of life. They've lived on the continent for generations, and each has contributed to the rich tapestry of African culture. To understand just how varied these groups are, consider this. Even if you picked the largest ethnic group in Africa, it would only represent less than 8% of the entire African population. That means no single group dominates the continent. Instead, Africa is a true blend of diverse peoples coexisting. Religion in Africa is a colourful mix. Christians and Muslims are the two biggest groups. Each of these two groups makes up around 47% of the people. That's almost half and half. Then there are traditional African religions. These make up about 10% of the people. Now you might think the numbers don't add up because they seem to be more than 100%. But here's the thing. Some people mix beliefs from different religions, so they might be counted more than once. Lastly, not everyone follows a religion. Around 2% of the people in Africa don't believe in any religion or god. They're called non-religious or atheists. Lagos in Nigeria is huge. It's the biggest city in Africa. So many people live there, it's even more than the whole of Romania. But if all of Africa was one country, Lagos might not be the capital. A better choice could be Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Why? Because it's already an important city in Africa. It's where the African Union is based. Think of the African Union as Europe's European Union. So, Addis Ababa already has experience being a centre for African matters. Addis Ababa in Ethiopia is a big deal for Africa. It's where the African Union meets. They have a special place there called the African Union Conference Centre. Not just that, a part of the United Nations focused on the African economy is also in Addis Ababa. That's why many call it Africa's political capital. If Africa was one country, two cities, Cairo and Johannesburg, would be super important for money matters. They'd be like the big financial hubs. Now let's talk about resources. Africa is packed with them. Think about things like platinum, gold, diamonds, and uranium. Africa has major chunks of the world's supply of these. But even with all these treasures, it's sad because Africa is still the poorest continent. If we combined all the money that this united Africa would make, it'd be $2.39 trillion. That's huge. It would be the 7th biggest economy in the world. It'd be more than what India makes, but a bit less than countries like France, Germany, and the UK. Africa is big and full of potential, but right now, many people don't have a lot of money. On average, each person might earn about $1,992 in a year. That might sound like a decent amount, but the World Bank says if you live on less than $1.90 a day, you're poor. Sadly, many people in sub-Saharan Africa live on even less than that, around 70 cents a day. But it's not all bad news. Experts think Africa's economy will grow really fast. By 2030, it might even be bigger than the economies of France and the UK. So people wonder, what if all of Africa was one country? This isn't just a dream. There's actually a plan for it. The African Union is working on ways to get African countries to cooperate more. They have plans called the Agenda 2063, and they're focusing on economic growth and unity. While globalization hasn't always been fair to Africa, the continent is finding ways to grow. Take tourism, for example. Countries like Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, and Tanzania earn a lot from people visiting their beautiful places. And with new technology, services can be offered without the need for people to be close together. Think about the possibilities. If Africa united, it could be a global powerhouse. A big population means a strong army and a big economy. They could challenge other global leaders. Imagine all of Africa with its many cultures and languages coming together. One continent, one flag, and a bright future ahead. If you like what you watched, don't forget to hit the like button, and for more awesome content, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned for more trending topics.